I want to talk about something that most sellers in your situation have never actually done. Not because they're avoidant, not because they're irresponsible, but because nobody ever asked them to do it plainly. And honestly, it's uncomfortable to look at directly. I want to talk about what waiting is actually costing you. Here's the thing about carrying a property you haven't been able to move. The mind tends to treat it as a neutral holding pattern, like the situation is paused, like the clock isn't running while you're figuring things out. It isn't paused. Every month that property sits, it is producing a number. And that number is almost always larger than sellers realize when they look at it all at once instead of absorbing it month by month as it comes. Let me walk through what that number usually looks like. There's the mortgage or the taxes or both. If you're carrying a property you don't live in, you're paying those on something that isn't generating anything back. For most sellers in this situation, that number is somewhere between several hundred and over $1,000 every single month, just to hold it, just to keep the lights on legally. Then there's insurance. A property you don't occupy still has to be insured, and non-owner occupied rates are typically higher than primary residence rates. That's another line on the number. Then there's the slow drain that doesn't show up on a bill, the deferred maintenance that accumulates quietly while the property sits. Every month, something ages. Something needs attention it isn't getting. A small thing becomes a larger thing. A larger thing becomes a number that comes off the eventual sale price, whether you account for it now or not. And then there's the category most sellers don't think to put in the calculation at all, their own time and energy, the mental overhead of a situation that hasn't resolved, the calls you have to make, the decisions you have to defer, the background noise of something unfinished that sits underneath everything else you're trying to do. That has a cost too, even if it doesn't show up on a spreadsheet. Now add those up, not in the abstract, actually do the math. Take whatever you're paying per month to carry this property, multiply it by how many months you've been carrying it, and then add the months you project you might still be carrying it if the situation doesn't change. That number is the real price of the current path. Most sellers, when they see that number plainly for the first time, have the same response. It's some version of, I knew it was a lot, but I didn't realize it was that much. And here's where I want to be specific about something. Because the sellers I'm talking to in this playlist have a particular situation that layers another dimension onto this. A lot of you came to this property through inheritance. Someone passed and the property came to you, and with it came an obligation to handle it correctly, to honor what it represents, to not make a mess of something that mattered to someone who isn't here anymore. That weight is real, and I'm not going to minimize it, but I want you to look at something clearly. When a property comes to you through loss, there is often a period where making decisions feels wrong, like moving too fast would be disrespectful, like sitting with it longer is somehow the right thing to do. And for a period that's true, there is a season for that. But at some point, and many of you watching this have already passed that point, the sitting isn't honoring anything anymore. It's just costing you. Month after month, the property that was supposed to be something your family member left you is instead becoming a liability you're absorbing. And the person who left it to you did not leave it to you so that you could carry it at a loss indefinitely. They left it to you so that it could serve your life. Carrying it past the point where it makes sense is not honoring the situation, it's just waiting. Now, I want to say something about the waiting itself because I think this is where most sellers need the most clarity. Waiting often feels like a responsible choice. It feels like prudence, like you're making sure you don't make a move you'll regret. And in the early stages, that's true. Taking time to understand your situation is the right thing to do. But there's a version of waiting that has crossed the line from prudence into avoidance, and the way to tell the difference is simple. In the early stages of figuring out a situation like this, waiting produces new information. You learn something, you eliminate options, you get clearer. The waiting is doing something. At some point, and you probably know, if you're there, the waiting stops producing clarity and starts producing more of the same. You've absorbed the monthly costs again. You've thought about it again without deciding anything. You've told yourself you'll get to it when things settle down, and things haven't settled down. That's not prudence. That's the situation managing you instead of you managing the situation. The reason I'm spending this much time on the cost of waiting is not to create urgency for its own sake. It's because the sellers I talk to who have the most regret are almost never the ones who move too fast. They're the ones who waited past the point where waiting made sense and realized later that every month they waited, the options available to them narrowed and the cost they'd absorbed grew. The sellers who feel good about how their situation resolved are almost always the ones who got clear about their real options before the decision got made for them. So here's the one thing I want you to take from this video. Stop treating the current situation as neutral. It isn't. It has a monthly cost, it has a cumulative cost, it has an opportunity cost. The financial flexibility or peace of mind this property could be producing for your life right now if it were resolved. Do that math plainly, not as a way to panic yourself, as a way to see the situation for what it actually is. Because once you see it clearly, the question stops being, should I do something about this? And starts being, which path actually moves a situation like mine? That's the question the next video gets into.